There's a woman in Phoenix named Sandra, 34 years old, no trust fund, no inheritance, no tech job. She retired at 37 with $2.3 million in net assets. She didn't win anything. She didn't sell a company. She did something most financial advisors would call irresponsible, something your parents would panic about if you told them at the dinner table. She used debt, deliberately, strategically, and surgically, to buy her freedom 3 decades before her peers even start thinking about it. And the wildest part? She still has debt, right now, sitting in her account, on purpose. That's going to bother you. I know it does. Because from the moment you got your first credit card statement, someone told you that debt is the enemy, that the goal is to eliminate it, that good people pay what they owe and walk clean. And I'm not here to tell you that's entirely wrong. I'm here to tell you that it's dangerously incomplete, because the financial system was not built around that advice. It was built around something else entirely. And once you see how it actually works, you can never unsee it. Here's what nobody tells you about retirement. The traditional model: work for 40 years, max your 401k, hope the market cooperates, retire at 65, was not designed to make you wealthy. It was designed to keep capital moving through institutions for as long as possible before you touch it. The 40-year timeline isn't accidental. It's structural. Every decade you stay in the game as a contributor rather than a withdrawer. The banks, the fund managers, the insurance companies, they all collect fees on your money. 4 decades of fees on your money that you can't touch without penalty. Think about that. So when someone figures out a way to exit that system early, it's not luck, it's not timing, it's a completely different understanding of how money actually moves. Here's the first thing you need to understand. Debt, in its raw form, is not a burden, it's an acceleration mechanism. The reason it feels like a burden to most people is because they use it to purchase things that lose value: cars, vacations, consumer electronics, lifestyle. When you borrow $30,000 for a car, you are paying interest on a depreciating asset. That is debt working against you. But when you borrow $300,000 for an asset that generates income or appreciates, real estate, a business, a cash-flowing investment, you are paying interest on something that grows faster than the interest costs you. That's debt working for you. Same instrument, completely different result. The difference is not discipline, it's direction. Now, here's where it gets tactical, and this is the part people skip because it sounds complicated. It's not. Let's say you have $50,000 saved. The average person parks that $50,000 in a savings account or a low-yield index fund and waits, patiently, slowly. That $50,000 compounding at 7% annually becomes roughly $380,000 in 30 years. Good number, but you're 65 when you see it. Now here's the other path. You take that same $50,000 and use it as a 20% down payment on a $250,000 rental property. You borrow the remaining $200,000 from a bank at a 7% mortgage rate. Your tenant pays rent. That rent covers the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, and, if you bought correctly, leaves you with $300 to $600 in positive cash flow every single month. You now control a $250,000 asset with $50,000. You are making returns not on $50,000, but on $250,000. That gap between what you put in and what you control is the engine of early retirement. It is called leverage, and the bank just handed it to you at a fixed rate for 30 years. You didn't need to be rich to access it. You needed to understand how to use it. But there's something deeper happening here that most people miss entirely, and this is what Sandra figured out that changed everything for her. When you own a debt-financed appreciating asset, you are essentially getting paid to borrow. Not metaphorically, literally. If your property appreciates at 4% annually and your mortgage costs you 3.5% annually in interest, accounting for the tax deduction on that interest, the bank is actually subsidizing your wealth accumulation. The real cost of your debt, after appreciation, after tax benefit, after rental income, can go negative. You end up with more than you would have had without the debt. That is the mechanism, not magic, math. Now, I have to stop here for a second because what I'm about to say next is the part of this conversation that will either change your trajectory or completely go over your head, depending on where you are right now. If you've been watching this channel and you're serious about applying this, not just filing it away as interesting information, but actually building a plan, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next video I'm releasing breaks down the exact acquisition formula for your first cash-flowing asset, step by step, whether you have $10,000 or $100,000 to start. You don't want to miss the sequence. Now, let's keep going. The second weapon in the early retirement arsenal is what strategists call the debt arbitrage stack. Here's how it works. Your ability to borrow money is determined by your credit profile, your income, and your existing assets. Early retirees who use debt correctly spend years before retirement building what's called a borrow and invest cycle. They take a low-interest loan, home equity line, business line of credit, margin loan if they're sophisticated, and deploy it into assets generating higher returns than the cost of the loan. The spread between borrowing cost and return rate is pure compounding profit. A 4% borrowing cost against a 9% average market return sounds like a 5% gain. But when you're doing that across $500,000 in borrowed capital, that 5% spread is $25,000 per year in pure arbitrage income, tax-advantaged, recurring, scalable. This is not a strategy for people who are careless with money. This is a strategy for people who respect money enough to learn how it actually behaves at scale. The careless path is ignoring debt entirely, keeping your savings in a vanilla account, retiring at 65 with just enough to survive inflation if you're lucky. That path feels safe. It is statistically the riskiest path of all. Let's talk about the third layer. This one is psychological, and it might be the most important of all. The reason most people never retire early is not mathematical, it's perceptual. They have been trained to see debt on a balance sheet as a liability to be ashamed of, minimized, hidden. But wealthy people read a balance sheet differently. They look at the debt column and ask one question: what is this debt producing? If the answer is an asset generating income, appreciation, or tax benefits, that debt stays. Not because they can't pay it off, because paying it off would be irrational. It would mean sacrificing the return on a productive asset to eliminate a low-cost liability. That's the equivalent of firing your highest-performing employee because you don't like having employees. Sandra's $2.3 million in net assets sits alongside $800,000 in remaining mortgage debt across 3 properties. She is not trying to pay it off. She is letting her tenants pay it off while she lives on the cash flow. She retired not by eliminating her debt, but by making her debt self-liquidating. Someone else retires her liabilities. She keeps the upside. Now, here's the part that should genuinely make you uncomfortable if you've been following conventional financial advice your whole life. Every month you aggressively pay down a low-interest mortgage instead of investing the difference. You are making a choice. You are choosing the psychological comfort of zero debt over the mathematical reality of compounding returns. You are paying a premium, a very real, very expensive premium for a feeling, and feelings are the most expensive thing you can buy with your money. That doesn't mean debt is always right. High-interest consumer debt, credit cards, personal loans, buy now, pay later traps, is genuinely destructive. The interest rates are predatory by design. There is no asset on the other end appreciating fast enough to justify 22% APR on a credit card balance. That debt you kill, immediately, aggressively, without hesitation. But the moment you cross into strategic debt, debt attached to productive assets, debt that costs less than inflation, debt that someone else services for you, the entire conversation changes. It stops being a financial emergency and starts being a financial instrument. The early retirement equation is not save more, spend less, wait longer. That is the equation for the 40-year plan. The early retirement equation is acquire productive assets faster than your liabilities cost you, and debt, used correctly, is the fastest legal tool available to ordinary people to acquire assets that are otherwise far outside their cash reach. Sandra didn't retire early because she was disciplined. She retired early because she understood that the game was never about how much you save. It was always about how much you control. The banks controlled trillions of assets, not because they saved up trillions, because they understood leverage before you were born. Now you understand it too. The question is what you do with that understanding starting today.